Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Jonathan Chilia, joined by my co-host, Chris Pergine, and here are your headlines for today. Iconic pasticceria IS-SERKIN forced to close as new bar rules begin today. Fearne versus Abela. Will we have Christmas parties this year? Diabetic woman kicked off bus for removing mask to eat crackers. Former commissioner allegedly informed Melvin which police departments had files on him. An MFSA chief traveled with Yorgen Fenech on Las Vegas trip. Chris, I'm just going to jump into the first story because it's close to my heart.
Go for it.
I haven't had breakfast yet, so I got pasticceria on the mind. SERKIN, one of the most famous and iconic Maltese pastizzerias on the island, situated in Rabat, is closed. And I don't mean closed after 11, but I mean closed at least until guidelines change in December, hopefully. If you saw our report yesterday, we spoke to SERKIN owner Kenneth Changura, who confirmed that SERKIN will be closed because it operates under a bar license. It doesn't have a snack bar license. It has an old bar license that it's had since 1981. It's been lumped in with all the other bars that cannot open today. As such, you cannot go and get your, tefe tazza, cheese pastizzi, peas pastizzi, because it is actually closed all day long. He lamented the fact that he's not allowed to do takeaways, and now he's asked people who want to, who can't afford more expensive meals, who have a bit of a budget when they eat out, where are they going to go now? He said, with €2 you can really eat at SERKIN. So I think what's really important here, Chris, is it showed us a little bit how these licenses, be it a restaurant license, a snack bar license, or a bar license, can affect you. Let's keep in mind that just this week, McDonald's announced that McDonald's in Gargour has announced that it will not be open for 24 hours a day because it doesn't have a restaurant license. This is a 2-floor establishment. Doesn't have a restaurant license, has a snack bar license. What do you make of this, Chris?
Yeah, I think this is really Malta, when you think about it, that we operate with licenses that we shouldn't have, or that we're operating, we need to update those licenses, but no one is enforcing them, no one is going through them, and so you end up in this situation where you're closed, but to follow the rules, but actually the rules don't make sense in that sense, right? Because they haven't closed restaurants or places that give food, they're closing bars, and yet these places have to close as well. And I think onto that there's something else, right? Which is, when it comes to the wage supplements and the kind of government support that's been given, if you're not registered, if you've been operating in the black market, which we know a lot of people have been operating in that situation, now COVID has created a situation where, at least I guess it rewards the people who have been following the rules, I guess. Moving on to our second story, and just before, I'd like to kind of give an update on the COVID numbers. So yesterday we had 75 new cases and 74 recoveries. So that takes up the total active cases to 1,915, which is a big number. We've had 57 deaths so far, and most of those have happened in the last 3 weeks. So this is the reality we're living with. And one of the big questions, and this is the story that we're going to be discussing now, one of the big questions is what's going to happen at Christmas. Are we going to be able to have family gatherings or not? And there is a bit of a contradiction between what the Health Minister, Fearne, has said, which is, no, we shouldn't have these gatherings, start to plan without them. And Robert Abela, who was on TV yesterday, the Prime Minister, who said that there's still hope, that if we manage to contain the situation, if we manage to follow the rules that are being imposed, and we bring the numbers down, then maybe we could have some ease of these measures come Christmas. Yeah, what do you make of that?
I was following the news yesterday, the international news, and I couldn't, help but follow what's happening in the UK. The government has warned families in the UK that, families living in certain areas of the country, they could have their private residences invaded by police during Christmas dinner just to check that they're following guidelines. Now this is quite crazy to me. I mean, just imagine you're there with your family celebrating Christmas dinner over a turkey or whatever, and the police are knocking and they've come in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh my God, you're over the guidelines, everyone fined, and everyone get kicked out. Quite a shocking scenario in my mind. Fearne has said that Maltese police do not have the right to impose these guidelines in a private residence. So I don't think we're going to be seeing police knocking your door down during Christmas. However, you know, the fact that this is happening in other countries is quite worrying to me, and I think it's something that we should definitely be looking out for. Moving on to the next story, talking about, you know, getting kicked out for not following guidelines. An elderly diabetic woman was kicked off a bus in Malta because she removed her mask to eat some crackers. Quite a shocking story. The woman actually spoke to Lovin Malta herself. You know, she caught another bus afterwards, but she was left shocked by this, by the way she was treated. You know, she's diabetic, she needed to eat, as she said. She took her mask down to start eating these crackers, and all of a sudden the warden showed up. They were telling her, what are you doing? You're breaking guidelines, and they kicked her off. And this isn't the only case that we've had in this kind of vein. A few weeks ago, we had reported on a father who was left livid after his young daughter was kicked off a bus and left in the middle of Marsa at 9 p.m. after she removed her mask as well. So it, you know, starts begging the question, Chris, you know, are these wardens being overzealous? Are they just, you know, intent on giving fines left, right, and center, or are they really trying to contain the virus in a more reasonable manner?
And I think it also draws to the other issue, you know, that there are a number of exceptions to wearing masks. So, for example, asthmatics don't have to wear a mask because that could create other complications. But very often, you know, you're not going to go around with a T-shirt saying you're asthmatic. So if you're there without a mask and people start harassing you in the street, oh, wear your mask, or the wardens themselves are doing that, then it does create problems. So I guess just, you know, we all need to be vigilant. We all need to take extra precautions. Even if some of us, you know, find that quite hard to do. But let's also keep in mind that there are people out there who have their own conditions that allow them, and it's actually quite necessary for them not to wear a mask. So a bit of respect and less overzealousness, I guess. Interesting as well that we're talking about police before. The Prime Minister has said that, you know, if Malta had a lockdown back when COVID started, there'd probably be street protests as there are today in many countries. So there is this balance, right, between enforcement and going a step too far, I guess. Moving on to the next story, the former police commissioner Lawrence Cotayar is back in the headlines. Yesterday we wrote a story to say that he, first of all, that there are hundreds, that he was mentioned hundreds of times when it comes to the in the tapes of Melvin Theuma, who's the state witness and the middleman in the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia. So now we know that the former police commissioner actually informed Melvin Theuma of which police departments were investigating him. And there were a number of police departments: the Economic Crimes Unit, the Homicide Squad, Interpol, Europol. And so this again brings into question how serious has the police investigation been into this horrendous murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia. Who can we trust in this case? You know, what roles did the former police commissioner Lawrence Cotayar actually play in terms of this investigation? And I guess we've still got more questions than answers, but there is, you know, I guess this is what we know so far about the tapes that have yet to be played. And let's not forget there are also the messages that have yet to be heard in court, which apparently draw a lot of links between Yorgen Fenech and a number of people, including possibly politicians who haven't heard of, haven't been named yet. And I think that brings us to the last story.
It seems like there's always a web of very questionable connections in Malta, and this does lead us on to the final story. And of course, we have to mention Yorgen Fenech. It seems like practically every week there's a new revelation of Yorgen Fenech's connection to this person or this person or this person, invariably in high-ranking positions. And this time it's MFSA Executive Chairman Joe Kushkiri, who apparently traveled with Yorgen Fenech to Las Vegas back in 2018, May 2018. They stayed at the very luxurious Caesar's Palace, and Fenech allegedly paid for the flights. So here we are again with a man accused of an assassination, being very close and buddy-buddy with some very high-ranking officials. Now, Kushkiri himself has said, listen, this wasn't exactly a problem. He was, quote, he was invited as a former regulator of the gaming sector. He was the MGA CEO a month prior to that. And at the time, Fenech was considering an investment, and he was invited to advise Fenech on this investment. So he sees nothing wrong with this. But I mean, you know, having high-ranking officials traveling to Las Vegas with businessmen, to advise them on new investments. I don't know, it doesn't ring very, very clean to me, Chris.
I mean, we had the situation earlier this year where a minister had to resign because her husband was found traveling with, her husband, who's a police investigator, was found traveling with Yorgen Fenech as well. So Yorgen Fenech, obviously the suspect, the main suspect in the Daphne Caruana Galizia assassination, has become very toxic to a lot of people, whereas before he was, I guess, dealt with like as not an ordinary businessman, but a major businessman. In fact, yesterday as well, there was Heathcliff Farrugia, the current MGA CEO. There were reports that he was stepping down because he was also named or had some sort of relationship with Yorgen Fenech as well. Heathcliff Farrugia says he's stepping down to start a new business, which you know, has its complications itself. You know, he's the regulator, and it seems that he's been for months working on building a business of his own. So there are obviously some serious questions we need to ask over there. But we have also confirmed that both Heathcliff Farrugia and the MFSA chief Joe Kashkiri have been questioned by police about their links to Yorgen Fenech. So again, we need to see how these things develop, but what's certain is that any relationship with Yorgen Fenech has now, whether it's toxic or not, it definitely needs to be looked at by the police, and the police seem to be looking into that, although I guess it's been a while since we've had any real action being taken by the police, so we need to see what's going on there as well. I think that brings us to the end of today's program.
It definitely does, Chris. From myself and Chris, have a day full of lovin'.